morning, everyone. It's now 8 a.m. and we can go ahead and call our Committee on Appointments to order. Nice to see you all. We had about a 2-week break from our meeting, so glad to be back here with all of you today. We have a number of items, colleagues, that we'll go through and seek your approval, and then we'll go to the vacancy list. And I know Mr. Kwame has provided some additional context and give some updates about some of the things we talked in our last meeting, just in terms of our learning and other appointments business. So the first item is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Zach Skogheim to the North Quarter Improvement Authority. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and supported, colleagues. Mr. Skogheim is a business owner in our corridor, and I know our chair, Brianna, has connected with him over the years, and so we're excited to have another opening filled on that board. Hearing no other comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries. Thanks so much. Next is a resolution confirming, recognizing, oh, that's different. Okay. Is it because it's Vital Streets? Okay. Resolution recognizing the appointment of Michael Williams to the Vital Streets Oversight Commission. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported, and so this is, I'm guessing, because it's a different body, so instead of confirming, it's recognizing. So, hey, I learned something new today too, colleagues. So as you know, we talked about some of the work of Vital Streets, and I believe Michael, Daniel, can you confirm what organization Michael is with?
He's associated with the Disability Advocates of Kent County.
Thank you. And you have it down here probably somewhere too. Yep, there you go. All right, colleagues, do you have any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Roberta Shirato to the Grand Rapids Historical Commission. Do you have a motion?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and supported, and this is also a new appointment. So this is not a reappointment, just a new appointment. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
It passes, thank you. Next is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Joanna Hively to the Uptown Business Improvement District Board. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Commissioner Perdue, I know you serve on this body, and Ms. Hively is a new appointment as well. All right, and I believe is a business owner in the district. So thank you to her. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Ryan Wheeler to the Uptown Business Improvement District. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
That's been moved and supported. Mr. Wheeler is a new appointment, but Mr. Wheeler is certainly not a stranger to being involved with our bodies, given his role in the construction world. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you so much. So that is all our business today, colleagues. So we were quick. It's 8:03. That seemed like a lot longer than 3 minutes, but we will move next to our openings. And if you will note that, you'll keep scrolling. There you go. I just want to say thank you. I know that there has been a number of improvements to this form as it relates to knowing sort of who is the liaison, what is the role, those sorts of things. So let's go through them. I think if you'll hopefully note, if you have any comments, please just let me know. Yes, Commissioner Perdue.
So part of this is just learning the process. So Daniel, I've heard you talk about the vetting process that the city does. But I know that some applicants will apply for more than one board. Can you just talk about how you begin to slot people in? And I am curious, especially as I have some appointments that I can make. Might there already be other people in the pipeline for that same body? Like, how do I get a sense of if we're kind of at where we at, if this is the most recent information versus, how many people might be in the pipeline?
Absolutely.
So that was like a twofer.
The vetting process is standard when the applicant sends in their application, their personal information form. The vetting departments are notified as well as the liaisons for those boards. And then if at any time you're looking to fill a vacancy for one of your appointments, you can always reach out to me and ask for all of the eligible candidates or all candidates that have applied. So even if they haven't been fully vetted as of yet, I can send you that information. And if the liaison is willing to, or if you reach out to them as well and say, hey, I'm looking at trying to appoint this person for a board. Might they be a good fit? They'll have that information as well. So they can say, we actually have someone in mind. Would you be okay with appointing this person? Or if the candidate is a good fit, they'll say yes, and maybe they can reach out to them. I think a lot of that will be made more clear in terms of a structure at our meeting next month with the
When we do
liaisons.
Oh, okay, yep, got it. Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah, I'll just follow up. Thank you, Daniel. So Commissioner, I would say that's probably the biggest one is if because sometimes people are in what I call this holding area where they're being vetted. And a lot of times, we don't really talk about people who are being vetted at this table because they may be vetted because they have arrears to the city. And so I always like to respect that. But sometimes we'll get somebody who's like, hey, I know I'm being vetted. They'll call Daniel and they're like, I'm going to take care of this thing. And I'm going to take care of it, but it's going to take me about 2 weeks to take care of it. So in that case, it sometimes can sort of span a little bit longer because we're waiting for them to resolve it. And then sometimes 2 weeks is really a month. And then we hear from whatever department, either income tax, assessors, that things are good.
Correct.
So, and I think sending out the PIFs that we have, that's been helpful. I know we're a little bit, I'm a little bit behind on just reviewing these last ones that you sent us from last Friday, colleagues, so I will say that. So some of them that came through, and just a reminder, those ones that you're sending, those are the ones we received, but that doesn't mean that the individual is fully vetted.
That's correct.
So while we might have an opening and somebody's applied, if they're not yet vetted, then that will be probably a delay that we'll also see, coming to this body. Is that fair? Okay.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
I'm more than happy to, work more closely with the vetting departments to see if this is a rush, if we're looking to fill a vacancy, say, before the next meeting of that board or commission, to
Yeah.
kind of push that process along to make sure that that person has the knowledge and the information they need before serving
Yeah.
on the board.
So for example, I'll add one other thing is, so today, we have a number of openings on urban agriculture. And I know you sent us a message about a PIF that was received and somebody that's fully vetted. Or maybe you asked about that, Commissioner, I can't remember. It was like Friday to yesterday. But with the urban agriculture, there are specific appointments. So like Commissioner Purdue has an appointment, I think Commissioner Robbins does. There's somebody from the farmer's market that they're not able to fill. Thank you for confirming that, David. So sometimes if it's just open, it can be a commission appointment, but then it's like a specific commissioner might have that appointment. And then sometimes it's like commission as a whole has appointment. So we make it really, really interesting around here. Oh, pardon me. All right. Any other questions, colleagues, before we go through this list? Okay. So the first two, I'm going to say, these are city manager appointments. Actually, I think the one above, the city county building authority, is also city manager. I have talked to Mr. Canfield. City manager Washington is aware of these. These probably meet maybe once a year, and at this point, these are just going to remain open, okay? Next is the DID, which these are a few appointments that are also still going through that vetting process. It has taken a little bit of time. And so we're just working through those. Our Economic Development Corporation in Brownfield, this is another mayoral appointment. Mr. Micah Perkins, who we received communication on, I think a few weeks ago, or maybe the last meeting, he is no longer going to be on that board, so we do have an opening. I serve on that body along with Commissioner Moody. The same for the Electrical Board of Examiners.
May I
Yes,
make a
absolutely.
point to that? I'm sorry. We are looking into that internally as the electrical code has changed. This body is no longer necessary or required, so.
Take it off the list.
Yes, staff is working on removing that.
Okay, thank you. All right. I want a clean list.
I'll try.
Because I got a year and a half in this first term. It's going to be clean in the last meeting of 24. Just letting you know that. Okay, great. And I think that is some of these bodies, again, are in the charter. Some are, obviously through different work that we've done, coming out of master planning process, all these sorts of things, shifting our sort of department. So thank you. We just did a historical commission, so this one will now be filled, correct? We have a number of openings on the Civilian Appeals Board. I think we talked about this at our first meeting. I have talked to the mayor about her appointments. This is a body that is a quasi judicial body that will talk a little bit about today, but then we're going to have another update at our next meeting from the legal department. It does not need to be a 5 PowerPoint slide presentation or anything. It simply can be a review of our boards and commission handbook that we have. But this does take some time and energy. This is actually the first board that I served on back in 2006 as a city volunteer back in the day. So identifying individuals for this, I know, is very important. So I'm going to continue to highlight that one. And I think you've given out any of the PIFs, and Daniel does know if anybody comes through that is saying cab that potentially could fit any of these appointments, he will share that with us. So I know we've talked about that as a priority. Our Housing Appeals Board, we have a number of 2 openings there. There is a residency requirement, and this is a mayoral appointment. So I think maybe in that packet that you sent last week, there might have been 1 or 2 for housing, but we can go back and look at that. And then our Income Tax Review Board, I know we just appointed somebody maybe 2 meetings ago or sometime in January, but I think this is still also an opening that we have. Is that correct, Daniel?
Yes, that
Okay.
is correct.
So that one is a very specific one, but it is a commission appointment. Our Michigan Street Corridor has an opening. Our Monroe North TIFA has a number of openings. A lot of times this overlays with other bodies that are in the business district. You can go to the next one. Our North Corridor, we just are filling one. However, I think we're going to have another opening, and then we have the current opening, so we might be back at 2, which is not fun. But we'll get that filled. And then we do have one opening for our Parks and Rec Advisory Board. This doesn't have a residency requirement. However, when we look at the body, and I don't know, Mr. Marquardt, if you have any comments about this, but I think we were probably looking for somebody who maybe was coming from the south part of the first ward, that we are pretty well represented with second and third ward, but maybe not so much on that far south side. You may approach. Just kidding.
Yes, that is correct. The vacancy that we do have is a third ward resident, so if we were able to find a
It is a third ward resident?
It is a third
Okay.
ward resident, yep. So if we were able to find someone from that part of the city, that would be ideal, but certainly south part of Ward 1 would be equally as beneficial.
Okay, thanks so much. So I don't know if we've gotten any new PIFs for that one. I think we might have had some older PIFs for that, Daniel. But if you could send any of the active ones that you have for that, because then I think maybe Commissioner Perdue, if you had some thoughts, and then Commissioner Robbins, I know both of you might have some individuals, and maybe it's a third warder, or maybe it's somebody in that, admittedly, I sometimes forget, I make assumptions that one part of Burton is actually third ward and it's actually first ward, so. So if you could do that, that'd be great. We do have one appointment for public safety, and I know Commissioner Perdue, you and I have talked about this, and you're actively talking to individuals about this term. That is the only opening, so appreciate that. Our Smart Zone, this does have a few openings. These are specific to a GRPS designate, so Representative Grant is no longer serving on this body, previously was on the school board, so that's one of the openings, and I believe the other appointment is also maybe MSU's appointment or another body's.
Which one are you referring to?
Smart Zone,
There is a GRPS appointment, 2 GRPS appointments.
Okay.
I believe one was John Helmholt.
Okay, that's right, so it was a staff and then also an elected, so thank you for that. So I know the mayor has been communicating with GRPS about this body, our South Division and Granville Corridor. I think Commissioner Robbins, that's the board that you serve on, correct? So there is one, but I think that might be the first one in some time. So you guys have had a pretty full board, and then Southtown, and then I think Commissioner Moody's on Southtown, right? Okay. And then we have a stormwater oversight, and both myself and Commissioner Perdue have openings there. I had somebody, but I need to confirm if this other person is gonna, well, no, actually, not that. That was another, but that was Vital Streets. But I had somebody who did want to serve on this body, but one of their colleagues is currently serving. And we try, it's really not in our best interest to have somebody from the same organization, just have one individual. So Commissioner Perdue, maybe you and I can look at that one as well to see what openings might have, given, again, I would say, the technical nature of this work, working closely with Ms. Rivette to make sure that it's somebody who, would be able to serve in that capacity as well. We just did a couple of openings for Uptown, so that's great. And then urban agriculture, if we could scroll down to that one. This is the one where we have a representative from the farmer's market, and Mr. Marquardt did tell me that they're not able to fill that role right now. I think my second question to you, Mr. Marquardt, was going to be, would they like that to be open, or if they can't determine a time frame, then I would respectfully ask them to consider. I need to know from them, like, is this a 2-month thing or is this a 6-month thing?
My opinion is that this feels indefinite. So I guess I would ask that you consider some alternatives.
Okay. Thank you. That was my West Michigan nice way of saying, like, okay, are they going to do it or not? So my question would be, Patrick, there's probably bylaws for this body,
Which one?
urban agriculture?
Probably, yes.
Probably, right? Yeah, there are. So we probably call out specifically, because you and I are working and city clerk on another body to define some of the language. And so I'm guessing it specifically says farmer's market. If we can pull that, yeah.
Yeah, I recall that does.
Okay. So we either need to make a change, and I would say, I don't want to do that arbitrarily. What we try to do is take it back to this body, right? Because but I think when is the next time that this body meets, David?
They'll be meeting in the month of May, I believe.
Okay. I think it's already halfway through March, so it's basically April. I think if you could put on the agenda, if you think that's appropriate, for them to discuss that and perhaps to advance any language to change. Because again, we as the body don't want to tell them that, but if we know that indefinitely it's not going to be there, it would be in the best interest. And they could certainly also be considered in the future.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Does that sound
Thank
good?
you. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Government at work. This is, you guys probably never thought that this is what you would be doing when you came on this body, but thank you. I just think we can still have them included and have them as a member. And then the rest of I think Commissioner Perdue, there was an email that you had asked about somebody who had reached out to you about potentially serving on urban agriculture. So you do have an appointment. So if one of those individuals is at your pleasure, we could certainly, I think those individuals may have been vetted already. There was some communication over the last couple days. And then there were 2 people, so I don't know if you'd like to share those with Commissioner Robbins and see, unless you have somebody, Commissioner Robbins, that you think would be good for this body. And then I think, David, can I ask you one more question? Do we have anyone that is representing the Access food system, so the countywide food pantry system?
Not directly, no.
Okay,
Our greatest connection is through Jill Meyer with the Kent County Health Department.
okay, so that might be, I'm just thinking about, because it's a representative of Kent County, so I don't know if that means it has to come from Kent County, or if it's somebody who just lives in Kent County. We can define that, or maybe if Jill has other recommendations as well.
Sure.
So, and then hopefully we can be at a full body again. This is actually one of the they're all important, but I get a lot of questions about this body, so.
I have had my colleagues who are watching on YouTube just send me a text message to inform me that the Urban Agriculture Committee is actually ordinance, not.
It's an ordinance, okay.
Yeah, so they don't have bylaws, it's
So-
all by ordinance.
Okay, so we would need to we would still need to go back to the body, because that is what we've typically done for any ordinance changes, but then it would need to come back to us in the end. Thank you so much, Legal Department. All right, people are watching.
Happy to serve.
All right, so we're about 10 minutes out, and I want to give us a little bit of time to move forward. So we do have one opening on forestry, and we are actually working on some ordinance language there in terms of, and I know, David, you sent me an update about who we want to serve on that body, given the work that does. So that'll come back to this. We've just did one for Vital Streets, and we may have another coming up, but that might be a one-for-one swap. And then the West Michigan Regional Planning Commission, and then the Corridor Improvement Authority. So, thank you all, because I think we've moved forward a number of appointments. We still have, obviously, a number of ones that are here. I've discussed a number of them. So you can see some of them are open, but there are people in the wings, but there are some that are certainly open, and we're actively looking for individuals. Okay? Next month I know next month, if I can shift to just a general update, City Clerk's office will be meeting with the liaisons to talk to them, some of the things that are on that, and that will be a public meeting, is that correct?
I believe that's
Yeah.
the directive
Okay.
the city manager requested.
Yeah. And so it'll be open, we're all able to go as well, but discussions will include things around, attendance. So once we appoint somebody, we want to know that they're able to go, and sometimes that doesn't always work out. We've had people that we've appointed, and then maybe a few months later, they've had to resign. We've had individuals who, sometimes they get on the body, and maybe they don't like it as much, or they think it's something else. And then Commissioner Perdue, you brought up at the last meeting, how do we do some evaluation to make sure that individuals feel like they're contributing? We're asking them for significant amounts of time. And so just thinking through some evaluation processes as well to get feedback when people exit the board. So, and I'm sure other topics as well that they need to follow up with. And then Patrick will give a little overview about, so if you all remember, when you either came on a board or when you became a member of commission, I don't have it with me, but there's a thick packet that's essentially the boards and commission handbook. And in that, there's a number of things that review our bodies, but then it also does outlay some of the different types of boards that we have. And I think that in talking with the legal department, that's a good foundational document that we probably don't pull out as often. And so we'll do a little review of the different responsibilities that each board has. All right. With that, unless there's any other questions, colleagues?
I do have one quick
Yes,
question.
absolutely.
I was just wondering, maybe on this list, and I know you guys have put a lot of work into doing some requests for us, but in terms of the cadence of the meetings, like whether it's monthly, quarterly, is that maybe something that we would want to add to the openings list as well, just so that, if we see it, we kind of see the individuals we might want to invite to apply. We can pass along that information as well instead of having to ask, or is that in an email somewhere else? I guess what's the best way to find that?
On the clerk's website, I'm sorry, Daniel, on the clerk's website, we have all the detail of when the meetings occur. Is that?
That's
Correct.
correct. We post the meetings schedules down on the Monroe level as well as our website.
Okay.
So what we could do, though, is we could do a cheat sheet that basically lists all the boards and commissions when they meet, and just a quick synopsis of one and boil some of that information. So you're saying, if you're requesting someone, they're like, well, I'm interested in meeting, but I can't meet like every week. And you're like, this one meets once a quarter. Like, okay, I can do once a quarter.
Yep, exactly. And then even when I reach out to someone, I can say, hey, is this of interest to you? It meets on these days at these times, this often. Just kind of seeing it all in one place, I think, might be helpful, and just could help with eliminating some of the people who apply and then can't make it because of the time commitment. There's a conflict or something like that.
Right. So boards and commissions at a glance. There we go.
We'll hit it on here, so. All right, thank you for your question, Commissioner. All right, hearing nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 8:24. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. We'll call the fiscal committee to order here at 8:30 and start things off with a resolution accepting a grant award from the Battle Creek Community Foundation in the amount of $22,144 for the Project Safe Neighborhoods Grant Community Project.
So moved.
Moved and supported. I don't know if,
Oh, sorry.
She didn't say support yet.
I'm sorry,
So moved.
Support.
excited. Moved and supported. I don't know if Deputy Chief Trigg wants to come over here. He's got DC Rogers on the item, but you're the only
And
fella in blue out there, so.
and everybody's sitting in the back part, Commissioner.
Morning.
Good morning, sir. I don't know if you just want to give a little context to this, if you can. If not, no, we.
On the Battle Creek?
Yes, sir.
I cannot give context to that one. That's the one I wasn't prepared for. Obviously, number 2.
All right.
There was question, but.
I know that we accepted a grant last year from the Battle Creek Community Foundation for the similar project related to the Project Safe Neighborhood, and
Yeah, I'm
This
sorry.
this is related to, I think, the software and, community policing, part of that model, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
it helps support the risk terrain modeling, which for those of us at attendance at the GRPD Awards on Wednesday
Right.
last week, we heard a lot about that. So
Yes.
I think it's very good work.
Yeah, that was definitely needed. Obviously, I know very little as far as the work she's done on it, but yeah, I know it's related to the DICE program stuff and very helpful with, I know Jen Zobel did a briefing on that for us all,
Very good.
so.
I'll turn to my colleagues and ask if there's any questions.
No, I'm all set. Thank
All
you,
right.
Commissioner.
Very good. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 2 is a resolution accepting a grant to the Michigan State Police and the Metropolitan Enforcement Team for the Burn Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $8,500.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
All right.
Back at
Thank
you.
you.
Did you want to talk about the number 2?
No, not, if it's not you.
This is an annual grant we get. It's related to the Narcotics Task Force, in Kent County, and just through, Michigan State Police.
Very good. Any further questions? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 3, resolution accepting a $10,000 recycling micros grant award and executing an agreement with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy Materials Management Division.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Marco, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is a grant from the state of Michigan to support our urban wood utilization project. So this will help to offset costs for stump grinding and tree grinding that still occurs for that wood that really doesn't have that quality end product. There is no match for this grant, and it is through the remainder of this year.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 4, resolution accepting a $95,000 grant and executing an agreement with the Heart of West Michigan United Way for the Grow 1000 Academy.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Harris, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners and city staff. So this agenda item is to accept a $95,000 grant from the Heart of West Michigan United Way by way of Bank of America. This funding is for year 2 of a 2-year grant to support Grow 1000 Academy that addresses longer-term employment opportunities for young people aged 18 to 24. After 40 hours of pre-employment training, participants are eligible for interview and to work at a local business or organization. This grant will support 50% of the wages. The other 50% is supported by the employer of record, and this grant also supports stipends for participants, OCC staff time, food and beverage, facilitators, and other program costs.
Very good. Questions, colleagues? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, resolution accepting a $40,000 grant and executing an agreement with the Grand Rapids Community Foundation for the Challenge Scholars Pep Rally event.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Harris?
All right, thank you. This rally will engage Union High School's 12th grade students enrolled in the Challenge Scholars Program. OCC's T2C Studio will co-create this event with the Grand Rapids Community Foundation students for a celebratory, resource-driven experience actually next month. This experience will offer young people the opportunity to talk directly with higher ed representatives, current college students, and learn about the significance of the decision day. And just a reminder, our Communities Children's T2C studio is located on the 3rd floor of the Grand Rapids Public Library downtown.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, resolution accepting $177,200 Blight Elimination Program grant from the Michigan State Land Bank Authority and authorizing execution of agreements to carry out the program activities.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Bohach, good morning.
Thank you. This is a new grant that was offered through supplemental funding from the state of Michigan, and this would allow us to address 6 properties that are currently in the land bank possession, but allows us to prepare them to better be able to sell them in the future. We've worked with the Economic Development Department as well, who's responsible for disposition of properties.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions about this? All right.
I just have one question,
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. Thank you, Ms. Bohach. Can you, do you know off the top of your head where those properties are located in the city?
I do. We didn't put them in here to give flexibility, but there have been 6 properties identified, 19 Quimby Northeast, 845 First Street Northwest, 1625 Lafayette Avenue Southeast, 609 Lincoln Avenue Northwest, 546 Neeland Avenue Southeast, and 914 Sherman Street Southeast. And there's a variety of, all of them need something different.
Okay.
But 19 Quimby, there'd be foundation excavation that would occur there. And that would actually occur through us giving money back to the land bank for them to actually take care of that particular property.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. No further questions. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 7, resolution approving Grand Rapids Public Schools KETA grant reimbursement for $86,962.75.
Support.
Moved and supported. I don't know if Ms. Clary, do you want to talk about this?
Sure, this is just the, we received the quarterly revenues from our cable providers related to the PEG grant program. These funds are for reimbursement of capital expenditures. In the item, we do detail that how these particular funds were applied, for, generation of public programming. So capital equipment at Ottawa Hills Auditorium, as well as, the Family Futures program.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 8, resolution approving Grand Rapids Community Media Center grant reimbursement for $171,676.85.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
Again, another similar item to the previous one. This one is for capital expenditure reimbursements for $171,000.
Very good. Questions? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 8, item 9, resolution to strike the outstanding 2017 personal property taxes from the delinquent tax roll. This amounts to a write-off not to exceed $54,698.86 of personal property taxes, of which $10,788.61 is related to the City of Grand Rapids villages.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Treasurer, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is an item we bring to you each year. With our personal property taxes, we have a 6-year statute of limitations in which to collect those taxes. And so coming up on June 30th of this year would be the end of the 6-year period for the 2017 delinquent personal property taxes. I really wish to point out that this was billed at $16.6 million, and that means we're only having $54,000 that is actually falling into this category that we may have to strike. Now, I say may because we still have a period up through June 30th to still collect these taxes. But I really want to point out the exceptional work of our public accounts collector, Ms. Margaret Yakes. She's not in the audience today, but she has done a fine job reaching out to our customers. She contacts the small businesses. She contacts the folks that are falling behind. She looks to try to get payment plans in place to bring them to the table. As a means of last resort, if we have a party that is got substantial assets, that's one where the treasurer has the ability to go out and seize those assets to satisfy the tax debt. That is, again, that's a last resort. We realize that this is the businesses within our community, and we still want to make sure that they stay in business. It's not, we don't use this as a heavy-handed tactic. So we are very, very good at what we do. This is a very small percentage of the delinquent personal property taxes. And of that, it's only 103 parcels out of almost 2,600 total. So a very small portion of our tax base. So with that, this is our request for this year to strike that roll when we get to June 30 of this year if they're uncollected.
Very good. Colleagues, are there questions for the treasurer? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 10 is our bid list resolution for March 14, 2023.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Colleagues, any questions about any of the items on the bid list?
I don't have any.
All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 11 is our warrant report for February 8th, 2023 through February 28th, 2023, and January fund and travel reports. Mr. Comptroller.
Good morning, Commissioners. So our first report here this morning for the warrant report shows that the city released cash payments totaling $38.7 million. That includes approximately $9.8 million for our employee payroll expense and $462,000 for income tax warrants. In terms of quantity, 3,944 income tax refunds were issued and 1,687 checks and electronic payments were issued. And the details of all of those payments released are contained in the tables in the following pages. Also included here this morning, we have our January fiscal year-to-date monthly fund report, which provides an overview of some of the things that drive revenues and expenditures in the main city funds that account for the bulk of our financial activity. One thing I would call out that's a, kind of a topic of interest is the report through January so far is showing balanced revenues and expenditures in general fund. But one question I've received when I'm kind of out meeting with constituents and socializing, the Citizens Guide to City Finances is the general fund balance, which we've been accumulating a surplus the past couple of years. So that one I just call to attention that it's something that people have inquired and have interest about a few times. So lastly here, we have our travel report, also for the same period of time, January fiscal year to date. Overall, the report is showing that through that period of time, we've spent $796,000 or 33% of our overall budget for the year. And that concludes the three reports I have for you this morning.
Very good. Colleagues, questions for the Comptroller? All right. Hearing none, that report will be received and filed. And our final item on the agenda this morning is our Treasurer's Report for the period February 8th, 2023 through February 28th, 2023. Mr. Treasurer.
Boy, how obsolete is this report after the Thursday, Friday, and the weekend activities we've had? So with our report today, I'll comment on what's happened over the weekend in just a moment, but with our report today, we are still expecting the Fed to continue their rate increases. They may have had they might choose to pause based on recent events. They might slow it down a little bit. Instead of we thought it was going to be 0.5%, it might be 25 basis points. But with our investment portfolio today, we have $526 million, earning 2.32%. With our packet that we present to you, we also show you a list of all of the investments that we have. So you can actually see that we've got so many municipal bonds that we're holding, so many U.S. Treasuries we're holding, and various governmental securities. This is not what is happening really, what's with the banks, SVB and Signature, and you're also hearing First Republic took a hit yesterday as well. The SVB was basically a traditional run on a bank. SVB tried to do a couple different things over the course of Thursday and Friday, trying to sell new securities and raise more capital on top of selling some securities that they sold at a loss, a pretty substantial loss. And so all of a sudden you've got this news hitting at the same time. And so that triggered a number of venture capitalists to reach out to their clients and say, you need to move your money out of the bank. And so now the bank can't satisfy those withdrawal requests, and now you have the run on the bank. They're caught into a situation where they invest your deposits, and they weren't really paying attention to how the normal use that a customer would have. With this whole process, we then reach out to our banks. And I want to reassure you that the banks in West Michigan are extremely strong, extremely safe. They're conservative values. They pay attention to their customers. We have conversations with our banks typically every other week, if not more often. We have 3 banks that we operate with where our deposits are higher than $250,000, which is FDIC insured deposits. One is Flagstar, one is AAC Credit Union. Both of those are in certificates of deposit. So those are time deposit earning a specific interest rate. Our other bank is Macatawa Bank. That's our operational bank. And so that's the payroll you received today. That's an operational account. Well, on the day the payroll goes in, there's $4 million in that account to be dispersed the same day. It's over FDIC insurance, but I'm not concerned that that money's not going to be there or that we're not going to be paying our employees. With our other operational accounts, they're general deposits. So as all of our departments are depositing money in the bank every day, that's going to the account, and that typically has anywhere from $2.5 million to $8 million, depending on the timing of the deposits. So as departments receipt those deposits, that money becomes available for us to move out. And so we continually sweep money out of that account and put it into other investments. Our structure is such that we ladder out our investments to match up with debt service and payroll and whatnot. And those are typically matched up in U.S. Treasuries. They're not sitting in another account waiting to be used. Even if we need operational funds, we deposit those funds in our custodial bank, and they're held within a secured account. It's not an FDIC because it is typically invested for us in short-term securities until we sell that and need it. But those are things that we have at our disposal at a moment's notice. Should we have any type of major incident in the city of Grand Rapids that we have to fund, we can go get that money. But I want to reassure you that all of our funds are safe and secure because we move those actively every single day. We pay attention to what is happening in the market. We pay attention to what is happening with the folks that we do business with. And this is the work that not only myself, but our investment analyst, Levi Bolt, who's here with us today, we pay attention to the market conditions. We pay attention to these little risks and warning signs that pop up, and we take action. We reach out to our banks. I specifically called out to Macatawa yesterday and asked not only our senior vice president in charge of Treasury, but also the bank president to issue some form of statement, which they did. And so just to make sure, it's not only for our knowledge base and our peace of mind, but that's also for every other municipality that does work with Macatawa Bank. But they are very secure. They have over $1 billion of liquid assets they can go get to satisfy anybody's withdrawal of their deposits. So I'm very, very, very reassured, and I believe that our banking institutions are extremely safe, and I don't think that this is going to be something that's going to impact us in terms of having a run on any of the banks in West Michigan.
Very good. Thank you for that update, Mr. Treasurer. Colleagues, any questions? No? All right. With that report will be received and filed, and we will conclude the Fiscal Committee here at 8:49. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see each and every one of you out this morning. We got some sunlight coming through the window this morning. It looked like it's going to be a good day. As we know that this is the month of March Madness, I hope that each of you have a kind heart during this month. That was supposed to have been a joke. Everybody should have been laughing. Community Development Committee starts at this point in time, beginning at number 1. Resolution scheduling a public hearing for March 28, 2023 to consider a revised Brownfield Plan amendment for the $14.3 million dwelling place regional community land trust project at 637 Winchell Street North Southeast.
So moved.
Support.
Good morning. Mr. Grosh is not here today, so we have John O.
I will cover this one. This is a project that you have previously approved. The address has changed because the parcel has been split. So this used to be known as 2080 Union, but it is in fact the same project, now addressed as 637 Winchell Southeast. This is a 42-unit home ownership, single-family detached home ownership development using in part the community land trust model, which is a model that provides for permanent affordability of the homes. We are bringing a revised plan amendment to you for a couple of reasons. There have been a few changes to the project, none very significant. Due to some of the requirements of the funding sources, the homes have gotten a little bit bigger. So instead of about 1,000 to 1,300 square feet, they are now 1,300 to 1,600 square feet or so. The eligible activity costs for the project have increased from about $2.6 million to $3.3 million, so we are adding those costs into the Brownfield plan. We are also, upon the recommendation of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, proposing to include 4.5% interest on those eligible costs, which will provide for about 9 additional years of reimbursement to the developer. And I will note also that the proposed sale prices of the homes have changed. Previously, we represented they were about $135,000 to $285,000, depending on the home and the family size. They are now estimated to be about $150,000 to $250,000, so a little bit of compression on both ends there. Pinnacle is the general contractor, still committed to 15% participation from women, minority, micro-local contractors. And the resolution in front of you would schedule a public hearing on the revised plan amendment at your next meeting to be held at GRPS University.
Yep. And this is a project that I've been following for quite some time, so I'm glad to see that we're continuing to move forward with it. Colleagues, you have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2 is a resolution approving a contract agreement amendment for the Dwelling Place Regional Community Land Trust Project at 637 Winchell Street Southeast. I think Mr. Berkman got this one?
So moved.
Oh, okay. Support and so moved. See, I'm so quick to get to Mr. Berkman, to get to all of you, that we forget we got to vote on this stuff.
All right. So good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So this relates to the same project. So we originally approved a construction agreement back in October of last year that covered the public infrastructure being installed, the sanitary sewer, the water main, and street improvements associated with the project. That agreement identified Dwelling Place of Grand Rapids Nonprofit Housing Corporation and 650 Burton Street LLC as co-developers. That 650 Burton LLC is no longer the co-developer and owner of the property, having sold their portion. So the Dwelling Place of Grand Rapids Nonprofit Housing Corp. shall be solely responsible for all obligations under that construction agreement. And so are asking for your approval of this amendment to the agreement, clarifying that arrangement.
Okay. Very good. Once again, I'm glad to see this project still moving forward. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 3 is a resolution approving the submission of the Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund grant application in the amount of $300,000 for the improvements at Highland Park with an estimated cost totaling at $607,100. Mr. Markwick.
So moved.
Support.
That's all right.
Good morning, Commissioners. This grant request is one of many that we continue to submit to the state of Michigan to deliver resident-driven amenities and improvements for this park space. As a reminder, grants are submitted the first part of April, and we wait then to hear back from the state of Michigan at the end of the year, December of 2023. So there's a little bit of a wait period there, but the match for this project would be coming from the park's millage as approved by the Park Advisory Board, and residents and the department are looking forward to these improvements.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Number 4 is a resolution setting the date to consider rezoning 620, 640, and 644 Chestnut Street Southwest and 835 and 943 Godfrey Avenue to the traditional neighborhood transitional center, city center zone district.
So moved.
Support.
Mrs.
morning.
Turkelson, how are you this morning?
Yes, I'm great, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. This rezoning is directly related to a future project at 655 Godfrey. Before you, or you may recall several years ago, we actually rezoned that property as well from the industrial zone district to the transitional city center, which is a light industrial mixed use. We did that to facilitate a mixed use project that is planned for that project. Or that property, pardon me. Now we are looking to rezone the adjacent former railway properties it'll give a little bit more room so that we can combine those properties and look forward to some amenity space that would be located immediately west or behind the project. So that's so Planning Commission did consider this and found that the request was appropriate given the current master plan as well as the facilitation of a good mixed-use project. I will note that there was some concerns raised by the immediate neighbor to the west. They also spoke out with concern at the time that we were considering 655 Godfrey, just a little bit concerned with the investments and the use of their property, the investments that they've made to support their business operations, which is fairly heavy industrial, concerned about the compatibility of that. However, that was also vetted at that time previously and also considered by the Planning Commission and ultimately determined that it was still appropriate to recommend support of the rezoning of these former railway properties.
Okay. So a date really hasn't been set yet?
Date hasn't been set. So this resolution before you would set March 28th as the date for ordinance consideration.
Okay. Any questions, colleagues?
So what is the proposed plan for, you said for future, some future building or development in that area? What exactly are they wanting to do with it. Like you're talking about housing and manufacturing all in the same space?
Yep, so clearly it's a big building. There will be some demolition of some, I think, blighted, underutilized structures there. The bulk of the project is mixed use, meaning that it would be ground floor office, commercial, light industrial, and the upper floors are planned to be residential.
Why was there pushback from the property owner that's near them?
They've made some, it's Beacon Recycling.
Okay.
They're a fairly heavy industrial user. They've made, like I said, some pretty significant investments. They're proud of the work that they're doing there and the property they have. I think that they're concerned about, new residents coming in immediately adjacent and finding their property to be incompatible and perhaps filing complaints and such. We look at that and say, if I'm a resident moving in there, I should be aware that I'm moving next to and what I'm moving into, which is a light industrial area. So we appreciate their concerns and understand why they're raising the concerns. But like I said, that was vetted by the Planning Commission and ultimately found to be appropriate.
The reason I ask is we already have a issue going on with an industrial area and a neighborhood and multiple complaints, so I don't know. Is that, I mean, obviously people are going to know where they're moving into, but will some of those things, I don't know, I guess those questions be mitigated ahead of time so that so we don't have this issue that we have going on in this other neighborhood?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, certainly I think that we would. So the project itself, or the property that the bulk of the project is on, has already been approved. And so that mixed-use development can already move forward based on past decisions by the City Commission and by the Planning Commission. So this actually today would facilitate better separation between the mixed-use development and the existing recycling facility because it will allow for that amenity space or a better transition between uses. So in my opinion, if anything, an approval of this rezoning improves the conditions and provides for a better transition between the two uses.
Good. Commissioner Drew.
No, I'll just add, I've toured and met with these developers, and I mean, they're very conscious. It sounds like they're working on a good relationship with the nearby businesses, and they're also just being very thoughtful about how they're going about this project. So I understand the concerns. I know I've heard a lot about the other incident that I think you're referring to, Commissioner. So from my, I guess, gatherings, it doesn't seem like that will be an issue, so.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 5, resolution setting the date to consider a major amendment to the previous approved special district planned redevelopment district at 851 Leonard Street Northwest and 850 and 860 Courtney Street Northwest to facilitate constructions at a 55-unit affordable housing development.
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Turgelson.
All right, I'm stealing Tim's spotlight today. So back in 2020, City Commission did approve the creation of a planned redevelopment zone district for this property. At that time, the properties on Courtney were zoned residential. The properties on Leonard were zoned traditional business area, and we did not allow at that time ground floor residential. So the planned redevelopment district was really established to try to facilitate a housing project, a low-income housing tax credit project, and making sure that we had the appropriate transitions and buffers to bridge the different zone districts that were in place. Over the last 2-3 years, through the work of Genesis, and I know Mr. Weinbeek is here as well, that could speak to the project if there's any questions. It has slightly changed, and so today we'd be setting the date of March 28th for ordinance consideration to facilitate the construction of a new building. So all existing improvements this time would be demolished. The former funeral home would be demolished, and we construct a 4-story building that has 55 residential dwelling units, and I believe it's 36 parking spaces. Planning Commission did recommend support of this change to the Planned Redevelopment District. I'll note that we did not set a public hearing. The timing is such that the project
would need an ordinance consideration by the end of March in order to meet the deadline of an April 1st tax credit season or application. And so we put it before you as an ordinance consideration.
Okay. Any questions, colleagues? I happen to know the owner of that funeral home, so that's a good project, good thing to do. We've been turning churches into apartments, but we're turning funeral homes too, you know?
Well, and there we go.
All in favor?
I just have
One question.
And just, I'm throwing it out there. I understand the timing of everything, but the fact that there was no public comment on there.
I'm sorry, let me restate that. The
Okay.
Planning Commission did hold a public hearing. There was neighborhood outreach that was conducted over the last couple of rounds for the submission of this project. So there has been neighborhood outreach and public engagement. It's just that City Commission was not set to hold an additional public hearing. That's all.
Right.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 6 is a resolution approving a commemorative designation of 33rd Street from Eastern Avenue to 1,317 feet east of Eastern Avenue as Bishop Dennis J. McMurray Way. Mr.
So
Bergman.
moved.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, gentlemen, ladies. Gentlemen.
Moved.
Support.
All right.
All right, so as you recall, the public hearing for this request was held at your last meeting on February 21st, and all owners of record directly abutting this portion of 33rd Street were informed of that hearing as well. Positive support was expressed at the hearing, and the request is in compliance with City Commission Policy 1020 that addresses the renaming of streets and commemorative designations of streets, as is the case with this request. So this resolution before you provides for that approval of the commemorative designation of this portion of 33rd Street as Bishop Dennis J. McMurray Way.
Good. This is finally going to happen. That's good. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 7 is a resolution accepting a quitclaim deed and dedicating public right-of-way at 2890 Breton Avenue Southeast and accepting a utility easement at 2424 28th Street Southeast, each for a nominal consideration of $1, totaling $2, and authorizing a payment in the amount not to exceed $1,500.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Bergman.
So we're looking to clean up 2 items with this action before you. So last fall, we completed a resurfacing project on 29th that stretched from Breton Avenue to the east city limits. And 2890 Breton Avenue is located at that northeast corner of 29th and Breton. When confirming the right-of-way for that 29th Street project, it was discovered that a right-of-way document was missing along the Breton Avenue frontage, along this property's frontage. Now, looking back, the city accepted a release of right-of-way from various properties in the immediate vicinity back in 1964. However, research indicates that this particular document along the frontage of this property was never recorded. Now, the current owner is willing to cooperate in clarifying ownership of this portion by conveying a quitclaim deed, which will then be dedicated as public right-of-way under this action. Part 2 relates to a property that's owned by the same property owner, just immediately to the north at 2424 28th Street. There's a 60-inch storm sewer crossing the northwest corner of that property that's now recognized as a public utility. And so the property owner is also willing to convey a utility easement to the city for that storm sewer, each being conveyed for $1. The request for the authorization up to $1,500 is to cover the owner's legal expenses that have been incurred. So request your approval of this resolution.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Our next resolution is a resolution which is number 8, resolution approving an agreement with MDOT for the resurfacing of Ball Avenue from Leonard Street to Knapp Street and authorizing a $1,155,774 for the total share of the project cost. This is Mr. Bergman also.
So moved.
Yes. So this project will resurface Ball Avenue between Leonard and Knapp. That's a distance of 1 mile, including replacing portions of concrete curb and gutter, restriping, and making more consistent the bike lanes that are out there, installing ADA ramps and 53 street trees. Total estimated expenditures for the project are $2,543,540. Now, we have a Surface Transportation Program grant, or federal dollars, in the amount of $1,387,766 allocated to this project, which means it must be administered by and through MDOT. So the first action under this resolution requests your approval of our standard agreement with MDOT. It sets forth financial responsibilities and conditions under which we'll perform the work. The second part then authorizes our local share of the project costs in that amount not to exceed $1,155,774, which will come from the Vital Streets Fund.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 9, resolution approving a construction agreement and accepting a public utilities easement for Windy North.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Bergman.
This development's located in Kentwood. It's north of 52nd Street, east of Breton Avenue, and consists of 4 single-family homes that are requiring sanitary sewer service connections. So the agreement before you provides for construction of that sewer to be performed in accordance with our specs and standards, and then the utility easement gives us the rights to maintain said utility once installed.
Mr. Bergman, I want you to know that Joel said this earlier. He said this was the Bergman show, so I want you. So we know that when we finish all these resolutions, you write up, right?
Sure.
Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Bergman? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Number 10 is a resolution approving an additional to the decertification. Did I skip something?
No, just try to start over.
What?
Addresses.
Oh, address, I'm sorry. All right, forgive me. Thank you for watching me. Resolution approving additions to the decertification from the city local street system 2022 Act 51 street systems repair. Support and
So moved.
so moved.
Support.
You know, we're gonna get this together. I think it's the sun outside. We're just flowing away. Everybody's so engulfed in reading this stuff.
I'll take
so.
the backup.
All right. So, Mr. Bergman, you're up again, sir.
Sure. So as portions of streets are added or deleted from our active network, we must formally certify and decertify those segments for the purposes of Public Act 51. Now, Public Act 51 was created by the Michigan Transportation Fund, into which specific transportation's taxes are deposited. So specifically gas and weight taxes, this is how we receive our distribution. And it prescribes exactly, how much per the formula based on the road mileage that we have in place. So what's before you is we're adding 1,030 feet through the construction of Watertown Way that was associated with the Viridian Place condominiums development, but also subtracting 709 feet through the vacation and closure of portions of Leffingwell, as well as a unknown street that was closed at some time in the past west of East Beltline, north of I-96. So the net increase is an addition of 321 feet to the city's Act 51 active street system, and ask for your approval of this resolution.
Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Resolution number 11, resolution approving an amendment to number 1, geotechnical services and construction materials testing services for various projects with a 3-year extension ending January 31, 2026, and an increase of $1,500,000 for a new total not to exceed $4 million.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Burton.
So in July of 2020, the city approved a 3-year term agreement for as-needed geotechnical and materials testing services with these firms, and included the authorization of $2.5 million of expenditures under the agreements. Those agreements included an option to extend for an additional 3-year period, which is what we're now seeking your approval on. This would carry us through the end of January 2026. Of the initial authorization, about $718,000 remains. And so looking at the forecast of workload and upcoming projects, as well as past experience, we're requesting an increase of $1.5 million in the authorized expenditure amount, bringing that total to $4 million. Costs, when we utilize these agreements, are charged to the appropriate budgets for which the services are required. So different departments or specific projects will ultimately be paying for these services.
Colleagues, any questions?
Can you explain this to me more?
Sure.
What are the actual, what is it?
Yeah, so when we're doing projects, oftentimes we need to do geotechnical investigation to determine what's the makeup of the soil strata. What does that mean in terms of the foundations that need to be sized, or dewatering that we're going to incur with a sewer project. And so these firms specialize in geotech and also materials testing. So when we're doing construction, we need to test concrete, for instance, to make sure it's meeting our specs and standards. And so these are firms that specialize in those areas. And so having them on a term agreement gives us the flexibility to reach out to those firms and seek those professional services as needed, whether it's for a particular project or to do an investigation if an issue comes up. And so it's just an extension, basically, of the work that we do in the engineering department, and it gives us the flexibility to reach out to these folks that have the professional experience.
Mr. Drew, Commissioner, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 12. Number 12 is a resolution. Number 12 is a resolution awarding a term agreement for professional and technical engineering services for various projects in the amount not to exceed $15 million.
So moved.
Mr. Bergman.
So this is our primary term agreement that we utilize that augments the ongoing services that the engineering department provides. We sought proposals from 189 firms that are in our database for professional and technical engineering services related to the various types of projects that we would implement or that are required by our city departments. Received responses from 40 firms, and they were carefully reviewed by a selection team that consisted of staff from engineering, the water system, environmental services, street lighting, mobile GR, parks and recreation, and public works. After that team reviewed all of those statements of qualifications, the selection team recommended that we enter into agreements with 19 firms that are listed in this resolution. So the resolution, similarly to the last item, provides for an option to extend an additional 3-year period once this initial 3-year period is complete, at which time we would come before you with that request. But it also authorizes expenditures in an amount of $15 million. And again, these are for as-needed services. When we do projects, we will put out requests for proposals specific to those projects under this term agreement. Then those charges, you'll see them show up when we have an award item. For instance, it'll say previously authorized design services. That's what's pulling against this authorization. So those costs are ultimately charged to the appropriate department budgets and the associated projects.
Colleagues, any questions?
Do these organizations still have to go through the MLBE process and then dictate who they're utilizing if they are?
So these are for professional services. There are a very limited number of MLBEs currently, and that's not something that has been set up yet for the professional services contracting side of things. What we are doing, our current approach is to get data on that, report on it, collect that data for whether it's MLBEs or MBEs, WBEs, veteran-owned, and incorporate those demographics as we track responsiveness as well of those firms, but cannot use as a selection criteria or dictate target utilizations based on race, gender, or ethnicity for this type of work.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 13, a resolution awarding a contract with Epic Excavating Inc. for installation of multi-model concrete pads at various locations at -2023-1 in the amount of $211,720 with a total amount not to exceed $260,000.
So moved.
Support.
So we're working with Mobile GR to install 98 concrete pads throughout the city for things like bus stops, bike and scooter pad parking, as well as meter-related parking pads. Roughly half or 45 of these pads will be installed in neighborhoods of focus. We did receive 5 bids for the project, with the low bid coming from Epic Excavating in the amount of $211,720, which was slightly over the engineer's estimate of $200,000. Now, Epic will be utilizing a 25% MLBE participation rate on the project, utilizing Durand contractors for the concrete work. So I'm asking for your approval of the award to Epic with the total not to exceed amount of $260,000 coming from the parking system fund.
Colleagues, any questions? Thank you, Mr. Bergman. That's a great project that we've been working on, so I appreciate the work that you are doing in the city. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 14, resolution awarding a contract with Franklin Howard Company, Inc. for grit tank improvements at the Water Resource Recovery Facility, Phase 2, in the amount of $4,632,914, with a total amount not to exceed $5,980,127. Mr. Burke.
So moved.
Support.
All right, so this project is the second phase of improving screenings disposal with new technology down at our wastewater treatment plant, replacing the grit removal equipment within a grit tank and installing a new washer system that will minimize odors. This is the very front end of the plant where the raw sewage comes in, and the grit tank slows down the velocity, and there are screens to get large debris out prior to the next step in the treatment process. And if I'm going too deeply into the wastewater treatment process, let me know. But there are actually 4 tanks in parallel, and we've rehabbed the tank number 4 in the first phase. So this project is tanks 1 through 3. We did receive 2 bids on February 14th, with Franklin Howard providing the low bid in the amount of $4,632,914. That was over our engineer's estimate of $3.9 million. So the project team reviewed this and attributes the overage really to market conditions. The next and only other bid that was received came in at $5.3 million, which is significantly higher yet. And with the very specialized work and equipment long lead times, we felt that the price was appropriate. And so we're recommending your approval of the award and asking for that authorization of $5,980,127 with financing from the sewer system fund.
Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution number 15, and the last one for this morning. Resolution approving a watershed plan agreement and a project agreement, and authorizing the city manager to approve documentations needed for natural resource conservation services funding for the Grand Rapids River Revitalization Project.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Burton.
So $4.1 million of funding that's being administered by the Natural Resource Conservation Services was awarded to this Grand River Revitalization Project back in 2017. And the city, along with our partners at Grand Rapids Whitewater, as well as the Grand Valley Metro Council, have been collaborating with NRCS on development of what's called a watershed project plan environmental assessment as part of the project. A public comment period was held in October of last year, and NRCS has since addressed all the comments. In order to obligate the funds under this, however, the deadline is approaching of January 20th. NRCS is asking that we execute both the watershed plan agreement as well as the project agreement that are mentioned in this resolution. Now, as you know, we're in the process of working with Eagle on developing a revised project application, but we still need to execute these agreements documents as we seek to secure this funding at this point in time. So the resolution that's before you approves the agreements and authorizes the city manager to sign all necessary documents to accept the grant.
Colleagues, any questions?
The grant deadline is June 20, right?
Correct. That's when it needs to be obligated by. Oh, did I? Yeah, June 20th. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm glad you're paying attention.
Commissioner Drew?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bergman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for being here this morning.
city, I haven't seen city attorney yet. Let's see. Okay, great. Hi. I'll wait for Commissioner Mooney to get back and then we'll get started. Good? All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole on this lovely March day, March 14th. So Commissioners, we have a number of action items before us this morning. And then we do have an executive session right after COW, and it's to discuss pending litigation and a settlement. And so I'll call for executive session. And City Attorney, are we in the Law Library? Yes. Okay, so we'll go down to Law Library after that. We have Economic Development Project Team up here at 12:30, and then our commission meeting is at 2 p.m. today. So we'll get started with our first item. This is a funding recommendation totaling over $8 million for activities supporting the fiscal year 2024 Neighborhood Investment Plan and Home ARP Allocation Plan. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support. All right, moved and supported. So we're going to have Ms. Bohach tell us about this. She has a PowerPoint for us this morning, so I'll have her walk through that, and then we'll open it up for questions or comments.
I want to make it clear that there's no action to be taken today. This is just a presentation that kicks off our comment period for these proposed
Thank you for clarifying
investments. So I'll provide some context for the receipt of our funds. The city is required to have what's called a housing and community development plan, and that outlines it's basically a strategic plan that outlines needs and priorities of the community and covers a 5-year period from July 1st of 2021 through June 30th of 2026. And so our investments need to align with that plan along with other priorities of the city. It's required that when we invest the CDBG home and ESG funds, that we are tying it to that plan, as well as creating what's called an annual action plan. So the investments that we have outlined for you become that annual action plan, and on an annual basis, that plan is submitted to HUD and serves as the application to actually receive the funds. So they're earmarked by Congress, but yet, and it's they're considered entitlement programs, but we don't receive them until we go through this process. And then we also, in this process, have Home American Rescue Plan, Home ARP funds that we have recommended allocation for at the same time. So this outlines a little bit more about those two plans. The Neighborhood Investment Plan, so our consolidated plan that I just talked about, that 5-year plan, is a really huge document. It's 245 pages, has a lot of data. And so when we go through our allocation process, we just basically boil that all down and say that there's 8 outcome areas that we want to invest those resources in to make it easier for the community to understand. And that's where the Neighborhood Investment Plan part of this comes in. And so we use that to allocate those entitlement funds of CDBG, home, and ESG funds on an annual basis. And then we also receive a small amount of Justice Assistance Grant funds that we plug into it as well. That's from a different agency. That's from the Department of Justice, and the other funds are from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And then again, we have this some remaining funds from the Home ARP allocation, which was a supplemental home funding that was provided through the American Rescue Plan Act. And these funds in our plan support development of affordable housing and the provision of supportive services. So recommendations will be based around those. And then when it comes to the entitlement funds, those are allocated by, or appropriated by Congress on an annual basis. So this year's plan, we are using federal fiscal year 2023 funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We received slight increases, not much, for this year's awards. And then when we already had the award for the Department of Justice for the JAG funds, and that was a slight reduction of $6,000. But when we program these funds on an annual basis, we get what we receive from the federal government, but we're all able to program at a level that's a little bit higher than what our entitlement appropriation is, because the CDBG and home programs support projects that generate some program income. So that allows us to kind of maintain a more static or sustainable program from year to year. One significant thing to note, if you look at funding from last year in FY23 to this year is that there was a one-time allocation of CDBG CV funds that were programmed last year that's not available to us this year. And that really impacts primarily the public services category. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Just want to highlight for you some of the process in terms of in advance of the application process. There were Community Development Department hosted virtual information sessions in November to prepare organizations and let them know about the process that would be coming forward. Went through the timeline with them, helped them understand what funds might be available, and also provided some technical support and how to obtain technical support when they submitted an application. There, we have what we call a interested parties distribution list. So when we communicate, we send this information out to more than 325 interested parties and community organizations that we may or may not be partnering with at the time. Those first information sessions, we had 63 participants attend, and then we gave notification in November that the funds would be becoming available, and again outlined the process and made sure that they were aware of some upcoming workshops in December. The notice of intent to apply was released on December 1st, and that was communicated to that distribution list again, and as well as published in media in print publications, as well as on the city's website, and pushed out through social media. We had 62 participants in those workshops, and then community development staff also provided one-on-one application assistance to 12 organizations who requested it. Our recommendation process, or the application process, is 2 steps. We have a notice of intent to apply that allows us to get some basic information about what the agency intends to apply for. We can then determine whether it's eligible for our funding sources, and then also has questions about their capacity and ability to carry out what they're proposing. And then there's an invitation for submission of full applications. We received 53 notices of intent to apply, and we also received 76 applications that requested more than $18.6 million for approximately $8.8 million that was available through all of these funding sources. The proposals were reviewed and recommendations were developed by our RFP work group along with assistance from community development staff. And that work group consists of 1 commissioner from each ward. Commissioners Moody, Robbins, and Assassi participated this year. And there was also an additional review that occurs by the Coalition on Homelessness Funding Review Committee. They look at projects that are under Outcome 1. And then projects recommended for funding, of course, we're trying to maximize the limited resources that are available while addressing the needs in the HCD plan, as well as the home ARP allocation plan. All of the recommendations align with the city's strategic plan. And then again, just a note that public service projects primarily are impacted due to limited availability of funds. And so I'll just go through a very high level in terms of the recommendations. Your agenda item, in addition to the memo that was provided, there is a detailed spreadsheet of each organization that applied, what the level of funding that they requested, and what was recommended. And you will note that there's highlights on it. So there's boxes that are shaded and there's boxes that are open and white. And basically, when we allocate these resources, we are doing one application process for all of these funding sources that all have different rules and regulations attached to them. And so that's kind of a tool to use to be able to determine if you were, so again, these are recommendations. So there's ability for deliberation from the City Commission to determine to make final decisions. So that spreadsheet helps determine which funding source can be used for that particular project. So in the outcome area 1, these are investments that we look, that support the ability to obtain or retain housing stability for individuals and families experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness. And so there are 4 projects outlined there that provide rental assistance, prevention services, as well as street outreach and rapid rehousing assistance. It's recommended that $60,000 be reserved at this time, not allocated to the entity that requested funding, that it be reserved for coordinated entry. I'm not sure, you may recall that some time ago we talked about the responsibility for coordinated entry is transitioning away from the Salvation Army, and the COC will be taking that over, and the Heart of West Michigan United Way is their fiduciary. And at this time, we're not clear in terms of what the transition plan is and how those resources will be allocated in that process. So we recommended that we reserve that until that plan is identified. Under Outcome 2, these investments support housing stability and equitable access to housing. And you can see here there are 2 agencies in our community that provide education for fair housing, actually do testing to ensure that there aren't issues with compliance for fair housing laws, and support people with legal counseling and representation in the courts. Outcome 3 supports efforts to increase the number of newly constructed and rehabilitated affordable rental and home ownership units available to low and moderate income households. These recommendations primarily are a combination of home and home ARP funds, and these projects would create 145 new housing units, and 136 of those would be affordable. And we also are recommending that there is, that we continue with the acquisition, development, and resale projects that allow us to support or create affordable homeownership opportunities. And this investment would support 8 households in doing that, as well as there is $22,000 included in the new development corporation recommendation that is CHOTO operating support. So that's Community Housing Development Organization operating support. In Outcome 4, this is where we invest to preserve affordable housing, make home repairs, accessibility improvements, and try to keep people in their homes so that they have resources to be able to do that, as well as improve health and safety and reduce blight. Recommendations here are actually the first set of those are projects that will renovate and preserve 224 affordable rental units. So these are existing properties in our community that are in need of significant rehabilitation and renovation. And so this again comes from home ARP, primarily from home ARP. Sorry, they're all from home ARP allocations. And then the projects below are more of a are more toward the repair and support repair and accessibility improvements. So there's a variety of organizations, including the city's housing rehabilitation program and code compliance, as well as our community partners that have repair programs. In Outcome 3, we're looking at supporting actions that build relationships, lift resident voice, and enhance neighborhood stability. Activities primarily are focused on community organizing, education, and referral services, and the promotion of equitable development. And this is in partnership with our neighborhood organizations. This recommended level of funding goes to the previous year, not last year, but in FY22 levels. So that would restore that amount. Last year, they received an increase across the board, and that amount was $67,150, and that was of one-time CDBG CV funding that we do not have available this year. In Outcome 6, this is to support resident safety and quality of life in neighborhoods. The activities include crime prevention, education and organizing, violence reduction strategies, and other services that enhance health and safety. And this is, again, where we also support neighborhood organizations to do that work. And the recommendation for those organizations are at the FY22 level. In this particular area, there was $82,475 of that one-time CDBG funds last year that we don't have available, so that's returning them to the FY22 level. And then funding is also recommended to support the Family Outreach Center expanded outpatient program. In Outcome 7, this is to support equitable economic prosperity. That includes providing, improving financial and social capital, and we have a variety of organizations that provide job readiness and job training services, and the recommendations here would support 218 individuals in receiving those services. And then in Outcome 8, unfortunately, we kind of use this as our balancing sheet. The Community Development Department will put in a proposal that identifies, that establishes sort of a pot of money that we might be able to use on an annual basis for neighborhood infrastructure, for things that come up and that are given priority. And because of the needs that's being identified in our community for repair programs, we decided that it was best to increase those programs and not support this particular outcome area. So if you look at, for example, the Nehemiah project, home repair services, there were slight increases in those awards over last year. So this actually starts the public comment process. So the actual recommendations were made public last Friday, but today we will launch that 30-day comment period. So we will take any written comments through the Community Development Department at communitydev@grcity.us, and we'll accept those through April 14th. There's a public hearing scheduled for March 28th, and so any comments that will be received there will also be considered. And we will make any written comments that we receive available to the City Commission prior to coming forward to you with requesting your approval for final awards on April 25th. And all of this information is available on the Community Development website at grcd.info.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Bohatch. I'll open it up for questions or comments. Thanks for clarifying. This is just an update for us today, and we'll open it up for public comment. And I know in years past, we've received quite a bit of feedback from the community about these recommendations, and I anticipate we will again this year. So commissioners, any questions or comments? I'll start with Commissioner Perdue and then Commissioner Isasi.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Would like to go back to the, in light of recent conversations, a little bit about the application process, I think in slide 5 and 6. So curious what the turnaround was for the actual application, the due date, and I noticed, secondly, that you received more applications than you did notice of intent to apply, but I saw some organizations submitted, I think, more than one application. So wondering if notice of intent was required, or is that difference in numbers because of organizations submitting more than one application?
So it can be either.
Okay.
Or both. So we do have organizations that submitted more than one application. And we do have 2 organizations that withdrew their applications through the process as well. So there, and I can't remember if there was, I'm so sorry. I think everyone was invited to submit.
Yeah, maybe our work group committees remember. Commissioner Isasi?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Bohatch. I was going to say, that wasn't going to be the thing that I wanted to say, but that there were a number of individuals who did multiple applications. We did have some that removed, and then I think that we had some individuals who might have applied under outcome, say, 1, or maybe outcome, I would say outcome 1, who actually are not part of like the COC, not reporting into the data system, so that would make them ineligible to be part of that outcome, if I remember correctly. So some individuals that maybe have not been in this space, they probably do a lot of barrier resolution, but maybe they're not specifically in that housing.
I will go back and
Yeah.
check for you.
That's what I recall.
I should know that answer, and I apologize, Commissioner Purdue.
Yeah, and you can follow up with any of the answers if you don't have the information now, after commission.
But I did hear you, I think I heard you say that the notice of intent to apply was not required.
No, it is required.
It is required.
It's a two-step process.
Okay.
And that's really intended to, to ensure that we're going to get a full proposal for something that's eligible, because if we know right away that it's not eligible, it's a waste of that agency's time to fill out an application. And so it kind of helps them as well of not doing that. And then it also helps us, that's our first phase in terms of the vetting process to identify capacity to do what they're proposing to do.
All right, that makes sense. And then on slide 10, outcome 4, referring to bringing housing units into compliance with various codes. Was just curious to hear, are there certain patterns or certain priorities in terms of where that gap is with compliance?
No, this supports the co-compliance enforcement in general in the targeted area. So we have some funds that are so basically it's revenue supported, but part of the work is not. In fact, a lot of what co-compliance does it's difficult to recoup the fees. We'd have to make them very high, and unfortunately, there's a lot of low-income persons living in many of these neighborhoods where there are compliance issues, and so we would have to make fees across the board that are very high, so this offsets that. So I wouldn't say that it's anything very particular, but we also have, initiatives like the hoarding task force. Those are issues. We have a lot of work goes into elderly and persons who may not be able to afford bringing their home up to code, and so a lot of liaisoning with them, trying to connect them to agencies. So the CDBG dollars kind of support those things that we can't recoup all the fees in. And then we actually get program income from the fees that are generated from the work that happens in these targeted areas. And so a $500,000 is return on an annual basis that we put back into this program. And so that allows us to, in essence, support more of the public services activities primarily. Around $400,000 this year is in public services, and the remaining covers administrative staffing and community development. Is that helpful?
Yep, that is. Thank you.
Yeah, and Connie, what might be helpful too is to do a summary of how these funds have been used in the past. I think when I was on the work group, I looked at some of the data and outcomes from years past. It's been a while since I was on the work group, but I know a lot of it is repairing stairs, helping families that need ramps, roofs, porches that are falling down that need to be secured. Obviously, we do that with some of our partners with home repair services and Nehemiah Project and disability advocates. But it might be good to just give a sense of the impact that these dollars have had, especially, as you said, in the target areas where we have families that are living below the poverty line.
And the home repair area also is where we are identifying that there's significant need in the community. So we wanted to make sure that those programs got increased as much as we could.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Isasi?
Yes, thank you. If I can just follow up, I think one of your questions, Commissioner Purdue, was how much time that they had. So I think the deadline was it December 16th? No.
So the notice of intent to apply was December, Aaron? The 16th of December. And then in January, we sent the invitations for the full submission, and that was due in January.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure about that because you had asked that question, Commissioner.
So all of that timeline was outlined as well in terms of those the work sessions in advance. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to say from the work group perspective, exactly what you said, Mayor, that I think there's a certain amount of funding. There are obviously more organizations. There's certainly a need. We had that coronavirus dollars. It doesn't exist. We knew that those were going to be one-time pieces, and I know that the staff and CD worked to have a lot of communication. I know there was a number of calls coming in kind of in those final days, and I want to say thank you because I know some of the interactions that you all had with individuals who were applying, and so it is appreciated to make sure that we get all the applications and we understand who's requesting dollars. So I did want to say that. And then, I think the other piece is really, is a good point that you said, Mayor, is if we could look at some of those individuals as we have these conversations. I think we're going to have our commission night out. Just what is the communication of what I'll call like these bread and butter issues, the things that are impacting us on a daily basis, knowing what's available to us. So I think that would be really helpful to sort of share that in action. We're here looking at this presentation and spreadsheet, but there's a number of good interactions and stories and work that organizations are doing. And certainly these organizations, we're not the only ones supporting them, but are part of that. Thanks.
And then I'll note that at the end of each year, we put together a sort of a mini report in terms of what was accomplished in each of these outcome areas, and that's available on our website as well at grcd.info.
And Connie, can you just send that to the full commission, just so that we have it? I remember getting that report. I think it's good for us to have. And, a couple other thoughts. And Commissioner, I'm glad you said that. Every year we talk about the disbursement of these funds, and the intent really is that they support organizations and they help leverage other funds and private dollars, and that's why we partner so much with nonprofits. The other thing is that they're federal funds, and I know in addition to having the federal guidelines, your department is also tasked with compliance. And when we do have issues with compliance with some of the organizations, your team steps in and helps make sure that we are in compliance with the federal regulations.
And I would add that while we are the enforcement arm for the compliance, we also really work hard with the organization to figure out how we can help them get to resolution so that there isn't repayment of funds. And we do our best to support that process as well.
Yeah, and I know some of us are aware of that, and we appreciate that.
Mayor?
Yeah, City Manager?
I just wanted to follow up to the comment about making the community aware of what we're doing. So our next community night out happens to coincide with the public hearing that's been scheduled that you approved at your last meeting. And so while we can do some preliminary education and engagement about, what we heard from previous community night out meetings and how this is responsive to some of the things we heard, I just want to remind the commission and the public that the public will also be able to share not only in the pre-meeting activities, but again, during the public hearing itself that night.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually glad that coincides with that. So, all right, any final questions or comments before I move on? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, next up will take us to a resolution scheduling a special meeting of the City Commission in May, and this is for a budget session. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right, moved and supported. Commissioners, we have before us a couple of additional budget sessions on May 2nd and May 16th, and then you'll see in the resolution the overall budget schedule of when the preliminary budget will be presented by our city manager, and then we'll be meeting, that's all right. May 2nd, 19th, 16th, 23rd, our public hearing is scheduled for May 16th, and then we'll adopt it. We have to adopt it per charter by the end of May for a July 1 start date. So any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. And Commissioners, those invites should have been sent to your calendar, so hopefully you have those on your schedule. Next is a resolution recommending approval by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission of a social district permit application pursuant to Public Act 124 of 2020 for the Grand Rapids Art Museum, which is located at 101 Monroe Center. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right, moved and supported. City Clerk, you want to tell us about this?
Yes, the Art Museum is looking to have a social district permit that's going to be located in the downtown social district, or the downtown social district, and this will allow for consumption in those common areas, and then you can't remove it from that area.
Great. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution approving the submission of a neighborhood enterprise zone exemption certificate application for W&S Development Partners, and this is located at 415 Sheldon Avenue Southeast. Can I get a motion?
Moves.
All right, moved and supported. Mr. Klooster, you want to tell us about this?
Sure. This is the final step of a project that you've seen several times before, including holding a public hearing. This is the resolution that would approve the submission of the 15-year neighborhood enterprise zone for this mixed-use project that's located at the corner of Wealthy and Division. Just as a reminder of the high levels, this is a $14.9 million construction project with 58 apartments and ground floor residential. You had previously approved the Brownfield Plan Amendment for this project, and this final step would allow us to submit the neighborhood enterprise zone exemption to the State Tax Commission.
Great, thanks. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, that'll take us to a resolution approving a revised Brownfield Plan Amendment for Talbot Quimby LLC, and this is the project at 220 Quimby Street Northeast, and it's a companion with the next item as well. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Mr. Klooster?
Yep, again, a project that you've seen several times, including holding public hearings. Also, the final step, we're combining the Brownfield Plan Amendment and the neighborhood enterprise zone exemption on your agenda this morning. This is a $9.7 million mixed-use construction project in the Creston neighborhood on the corner of Plainfield and Quimby, 72 units, 72 residential units, also ground floor residential. Final step allowing us to work with the state on the neighborhood enterprise zone and the revised Brownfield Plan Amendment.
Great, thanks. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. And then the last one, which as I said is a companion with the prior one, this is a resolution approving the submission of a neighborhood enterprise zone exemption certificate for the same project located at 220 Quimby.
Moves.
Support. All right, moved and supported. Commissioners, any additional questions or comments? All right, I know our second ward commissioners are excited to see this move forward. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. All right, commissioners, that will take us to a call for executive session. Again, this will be down in the law library related to pending litigation and a settlement pursuant to MLC. Do I have to read all of that? 15.268. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. This is a voice vote. I'll start down here. Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner Moody?
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Knight?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So I will see all of you, along with our city attorney and city manager, down in the law library. Thank you.